Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here, and it is not Sunday, it is Monday, but we are doing breaches of the week. And I apologize for being a day late here, but scheduling conflicts abound. Let's get this done. And I want to thank, as always, the people that sent these in before I get started. And that would be Jason Dance, Chris Fallon, Jacqueline Wolf, and Barrett Peterson. Thank you so very much. And with that, we have no time to lose because we are playing catch up. And we're going to start with French shipping firm CMA CGM. Now, they reported on Monday 2 weeks ago that they had been hit with a data breach almost a year after it was hit with a ransomware attack that knocked their systems offline for several days. Now, they gave out few details and they did not list this type of attack when it occurred, and the reason for the breach or how many records have been compromised, we don't know yet, but this is their second cyber attack. And if you don't know this, basically the re-attack rate, of businesses that have been hit stands at very high. It's something like 80% odd. So if you get hit and you're not making improvements, you will get hit again. Heads up. Moving on. Let's talk about Crystal Valley Farm Co-op. Now, they're out of Minnesota, and essentially they became the second U.S. agriculture business to be hit with a ransomware attack this past week. Now, the company released a statement about the attack on their website last Tuesday afternoon, but as of Wednesday afternoon, the site had been knocked offline and was still down. They confirmed in a Facebook post that they had basically been alerted to this attack on Sunday, September 19th. Obviously, a huge problem. If you're wondering what that first, agriculture industry, whatever was hit, that would be the New Cooperative. They were the first co-op to get hit in this case. They're Iowa-based, and they got hit with a ransomware attack by the Black Matter ransomware gang who wanted a $5.9 million ransom from New Cooperative. So it is a bad day, or I should say a bad couple of weeks, for cooperatives here in the United States. Moving on, let's talk about UPS.com, because a clever UPS phishing campaign utilized cross-site scripting vulnerabilities in UPS.com to push fake and malicious invoice Word documents. Now, obviously, that scam goes back as old as time, but this one is unique. Now, the phishing scam was first discovered by security researcher Daniel Gallagher, and it pretended to be an email from UPS stating that a package had an exception that needed to be picked up by the customer. Now, what makes this attack stand out is that they use cross-site scripting vulnerabilities in UPS.com to modify the site's regular page to basically make it look like a legitimate download page. This vulnerability allowed the threat actor to distribute a malicious document through a remote Cloudflare worker, but made it look like it was being downloaded directly from UPS.com. That way, if you have been trained to say, oh, well, it's from UPS.com, it must be legitimate, it's not, because of cross-site scripting attacks. So that is a huge, huge thing. And so heads up, if you have been told by UPS to go pick up a package in the last week or so. Moving on, let's talk about European customer care and call center provider GSS, because they suffered a ransomware attack that crippled their systems and impacted its Spanish-speaking customers. Now, the Conti ransomware gang is believed to have been basically behind this, but they said there's no evidence that the ransomware operators have stolen customer data during the attack. We shall see. Conti has a ransomware leak site. Moving on, let's talk about PortPass out of Canada. This is a proof of vaccination app, and they expose personal information, including the driver's licenses of what could be as many as hundreds of thousands of users by leaving their website unsecure. A week ago Monday, CBC News up in Canada received a tip that the user's profiles on the app website could be accessed by members of the public. The information was not encrypted and could be viewed in plain text. Now, earlier in the day, the Calgary-based company CEO, Zakir Hussain, had denied that the app had verification or security issues and accused those who raised concerns about it of breaking the law. And clearly, here we are, Mr. Hussain having to eat his words. So if you use PortPass in Canada, the app, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about luxury retailer Neiman Marcus. They're sending customers notice of a data breach of roughly 4.3 million customers. Now, according to a letter which has been shared with Maine's Attorney's General Office for data breach notifications, this data breach actually happened in May of 2020, when an attacker gained access to a large number of online account credentials and used them to access private customers' information. This was discovered on September 9th of 2021. So it took them over a year, about a year and a half to figure that out. We are talking about online account usernames and passwords, credit card numbers and expiration dates, security questions with matching answers, so that's great. Neiman Marcus's virtual gift card numbers, shipping addresses, and contact information. So if you shop online at Neiman Marcus, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about Coinbase. This is the cryptocurrency brokerage. Accounts of at least 6,000 Coinbase customers were robbed of funds after the attackers bypassed the basically multi-factor authentication. Now, according to the notification letter, Coinbase sent this into California for CCPA disclosures. This theft happened between March and May of 2021. Now, the attackers used a flaw in Coinbase's account recovery process to basically seize the SMS or text message two-factor authentication tokens needed to break into customer accounts and transfer funds to crypto wallets unassociated with Coinbase. This is always underscoring why SMS text messaging for two-factor authentication is never recommended anymore. Get yourself a good authenticator app, ideally with identity management. Moving on, let's talk about Texas behavioral health care provider Texoma Community Center. An unauthorized actor accessed several employee email accounts between September 24th of 2020 and December 1 of 2020, and it wasn't until July 15th of this year that they identified the individuals potentially impacted by this, and we are talking dates of birth, medical history, treatment of diagnosis, health information, health insurance information, such as policy and subscriber information, birth certificates, marriage certificates, digital signatures, facial photographs, email addresses, passwords, unique biometric data, vehicle identification numbers, usernames and passwords, military ID numbers, and for a small amount of individuals, social security, driver's license, financial account information, credit and or debit card information out there. So wow, took them over a year to let us know this. So if you use the Texoma Community Center in Texas, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about the Missouri Delta Medical Center. The protected health information basically was stolen, ransomware. There you go. That's what I'm going to say. Earlier this month, a sample of that stolen data was uploaded to the Hive ransomware gang's leak site in an effort to pressure the medical center into paying. And obviously, they've attacked multiple healthcare providers in the process of the last year or so. Now, names, addresses, phone numbers, dates of birth, social security numbers, sex and race, next of kin details, diagnosis, and financial information of 95,000 individuals was stolen in this attack. So if you belong to or use Missouri Delta Medical Center, check in. Moving on, let's talk about the Barlow Respiratory Hospital in California. They got hit with ransomware on August 27th of this year. Now, the attack was conducted by the Vice Society ransomware gang that accessed their network and electronic medical record system. Prior to using the ransomware to encrypt the files, the gang exfiltrated that, and that's all we've got. But assume what I just told you about the Delta Medical Center is going to apply to Barlow as well. So if you use Barlow Respiratory Hospital, a patient, employee, whatever, definitely check in. Moving on, because healthcare is all the rage, let's talk about the Family Medical Center of Michigan. They contacted their patients to advise them of a data breach that occurred in July of 2020. Now, a group of attackers based in the Ukraine targeted the company in a ransomware attack, taking control of the company's financial files and encrypting them so the employees would be unable to access the financial information. So there you go. If you use Family Medical Center in Michigan, heads up to you, Ukrainian hackers did a number. Moving on, let's talk about eHealth Saskatchewan. Do you see the pattern here? There's nothing but health here. Believe me, this wasn't my fault. Moving on, eHealth Saskatchewan. QR codes are being temporarily removed from residents' COVID-19 vaccination records due to a situation that eHealth Saskatchewan is treating as a privacy breach. Quote, IT has identified that the COVID-19 vaccination records of up to 19 residents have the potential of displaying other citizens' QR codes. Information from one individual has been identified to date. So obviously a huge problem. If you're in Saskatchewan and use eHealth Saskatchewan, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about Clubhouse and Facebook together. 3.8 billion breached users were combined into a giant list on the dark web. Now, on its own, a database of 3.8 billion phone numbers leaked from social media platform Clubhouse doesn't have much value in the dark web. In fact, they were basically dumped out there for free. But an enterprising threat actor, and there you go, reportedly combined the phone numbers of 533 million Facebook profiles with what they were able to identify as part of the 3.8 billion Clubhouse, and basically they put that out there for the highest bidder. Now, according to Cyber News, this Clubhouse Facebook data includes names, phone numbers, and other data, and is listed in underground form for $100,000 US for all 3.8 billion entries, with smaller chunks of data being available for less. Reportedly, the seller is still looking for buyers. Now, these credentials could obviously be leveraged to do things like account takeover attacks, because you've got the phone number, email address, username, all that kind of stuff. So that's obviously a huge problem. But combining the Clubhouse phone numbers with the Facebook users made that data a lot more valuable. We'll see if it gets sold. Moving on. Let's talk about Apple, because a proof of concept exploit code for 3 zero-day vulnerabilities in the iPhone operating system, known as iOS, were basically published on GitHub. That's a repository where you publish these kinds of things, after Apple delayed patching and failed to credit the actual person that discovered and reported them. Now, that person is Denis Tokarev. He's a software developer who found these 4 0 days, reported them to Apple between March 10th and May 4th. However, Apple silently patched one of them in July with the release of iOS 14.7, but didn't give him credit in the security advisory. Since then, all attempts have been made to get basically an explanation for Apple's failure to fix the rest of these unpatched vulnerabilities, and for their refusal to credit them. And basically, these were ignored in more security advisories for 14.7.1, 14.8, and now 15.0. And that's a huge problem. And I actually did a video/podcast on this exact problem that Apple has, is that their bug bounty programs are really lacking. They're so secretive and so insular that they don't want to basically let their world know that, hey, we've got some massive vulnerability that can get you infected or hijacked or whatever, because it flies against that decades of marketing that Apple has to say, well, if you have a Mac or you've got an Apple product, you'll never get a virus, you'll never get hit. It's basically marketing junk. They get hit all the time. They release patches, they release updates. You really need to be transparent and encouraging, Apple. That's how you improve your products. Just ask Microsoft. And finally, and this is a huge finally for the week, and this is nuts. We're going to be talking about the Pandora Papers. Now, you might have seen this posted on social media or whatever news outlets that you're reading, but oh boy, this is actually making the Panama Papers look like a primer for what this became. Now, if you recall, the Panama Papers dumped out a lot of personal financial information on some very famous people around the world. The one I remember is Jackie Chan. And so you had an insight into how Jackie Chan was moving his money through brokers, et cetera, around the world. This is 1,000 times worse. And there's about 8 billion sources on this one. I'm actually cribbing from multiple sources, but Reuters was my primary because I thought they listed it out pretty well. And I've got some other sources here too. Now, here's what's going on. The Czech Prime Minister, for one, the King of Jordan, and the chairman of a well-known Indian conglomerate were among the global figures denying wrongdoing basically this past Monday or so, after basically a leak of what major news outlets called a secret trove of documents on offshore finance. Now, India has said that it's going to investigate cases of this data dump, collectively known as the Pandora Papers. Pakistan's finance minister, Shaukat Tarin, said officials named in the document would be investigated, including himself. The Kremlin out of Russia said it has no evidence in this leak of hidden wealth among Russian President Vladimir Putin's entourage, after the Washington Post said that the document showed Putin's mistress had used offshore funds to buy a flat in Monaco. The dump of more than 11.9 million records, amounting to almost 3 terabytes of data, was 5 years after the Panama Papers. And this is absolutely nuts. Now, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, a Washington, D.C. based network of reporters, media, and media organizations, said these files are linked to about 35 current and former national leaders, more than 330 politicians and public officials in 91 countries and territories. It did not say how the files were obtained, and Reuters, as well as the others, could not independently verify these reports or the documents detailed. But man, is this getting press globally. Now, the use of offshore companies is not illegal or by itself evidence of wrongdoing, but news organizations in the consortium said And such transactions could be used to hide wealth from tax collectors and other authorities. And we are getting to that. Now, for example, Jordan's King Abdullah, basically a close U.S. ally, was reported to have offshore accounts and basically spent more than $100 million in luxury homes in the United Kingdom and the United States. The Washington Post, which is part of this consortium, also reported on the case of Svetlana Krenok, and I'm so sorry for mispronouncing names today. She's a Russian woman that basically became the owner of a Monaco apartment through an offshore company incorporated on the Caribbean island of Tortola in April of 2003, just weeks before she gave birth to a girl. At this time, she was in a secret years-long relationship with Vladimir Putin, the newspaper said, citing Russian investigation outlet Prokt. Now, the Post said that Ms. Krivniknik, and I'm so sorry, I'm not trying to mispronounce these, and her daughter, who is now 18, did not respond for requests for comment. The Kremlin has said it's seen no evidence in the leak of hidden wealth among Putin's inner circle. And basically somebody had said, or rather one of the articles had said that the 18-year-old, this daughter, looks exactly like Putin. So I went Googling and oh my God, if that's not Putin's kid, he's got a twin somewhere because she looks like an 18-year-old female version of Vladimir Putin. Now, days ahead, interestingly enough, moving on from Russia, days ahead of the Czech Republic's October 8th and 9th parliamentary elections, the documents reportedly tied Prime Minister Andrej Babis to $22 million in real estate near Caen in France. Now, speaking in a television debate, Babis, who was a billionaire before he entered politics, denied any wrongdoing. Quote, "The money left a Czech bank was taxed, and it's my money and returned to a Czech bank," according to Mr. Babis. Lebanon's former Prime Minister, Hassan Diab, basically said on Monday that he had given up shares in a company that he was linked to in the leak and denied wrongdoing. A statement by his office said he hadn't taken part in the founding of the company. He had taken part in the founding of a company in 2015 and owned 17 shares, but the firm had no activity since then, and he'd also resigned and basically sold his stake. The Indian Express, as part of this consortium, said that the documents also showed that businessman Anil Ambani and his representatives owned at least 18 offshore companies in Jersey, the British Virgin Islands, and Cyprus. India's finance ministry said it would investigate these cases linked to the Pandora Papers and take appropriate action, adding, and I quote, "The government will also proactively engage with foreign jurisdictions for obtaining information in respect of relevant taxpayers and entities." Pakistan's opposition called on Prime Minister Imran Khan to order cabinet ministers and aides named in the leak to resign and face investigation. It keeps on going. Finance Minister Tarin, among the Pakistanis identified, told GeoTV that everyone would be investigated, including himself. He also denied wrongdoing. On top of this, multiple prime ministers, leaders, and former leaders in Europe, Africa, and other continents were caught up in this, not to mention celebrities and sports stars that obviously are incredibly wealthy. Shakira, for example, was there. There you go. She's in there as well. Some other noted people in Lebanon, Prime Minister Najib Mikati, his predecessor as well, Hassan Diab, Riyad Salameh, and the governor, who is the governor of Lebanon's central bank. In Azerbaijan, President Ilham Aliyev, as well as his family, are secretly involved apparently in British property deals worth more than £400 million or 542 million US, according to the BBC. The state of South Dakota. Yes, the actual state of South Dakota. The documents revealed almost $360 billion in customer assets that are sitting in trusts in South Dakota, some of it tied to foreign individuals and companies accused of human rights abuses and other wrongdoing. Apparently, South Dakota rivals basically opaque jurisdictions in Europe and the Caribbean for financial secrecy. Who knew? Apparently, tax haven, tax shelter in South Dakota. Kenya's president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and 6 members of his family have been linked to 13 offshore companies, according to the documents. And in the United Kingdom, former Prime Minister Tony Blair avoided around £350,000 in property taxes for his place in London by basically buying it through a shell corporation in the Caribbean, and on and on and on. And these things are just, I think, beyond fascinating. But what it really shows is that, most of us don't have banking at this level. We don't have these massive loopholes, like we don't have shell corporations in the Seychelles, or some place that a lot of these individuals do. And when you get to that level of power, apparently hiding money essentially through an international network of shell corporations, in some cases 13 or more shell corporations, like Kenya's president and some of the others, is absolutely huge. It's massive. And so as you're looking at diversifying that portfolio, or if you're looking at getting run out of town because of this, your money is offshore and it's secure. I think it's just a very interesting look, but these kinds of leaks, I think, really show us that banking for you and I that has a savings and a checking account and possibly a stock portfolio is nothing compared to what we could be doing with our cash, providing we actually have the cash. And so I think that's really interesting. I don't think I'm named in the Pandora Papers for obvious reasons, and here we are. But that is your news of the day. Those are your breaches of the week. I think it's absolutely nuts. I'm sorry I'm a day late, but quite frankly, it's just interesting to me. And so there you go. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.